What is up, everybody? Welcome back to Case Sizzle. My name is Zach, and today we're asking and answering the question of how to access a .env file in Python. So first off, I'm going to go through and explain what is a .env file, and then we're going to go into how you can access it. So if you want to skip ahead, you can go to that part. But without further ado, let's hop right in and start coding. So like I mentioned before we dive in, what is a .env file or an env file? So essentially, this is an example env file. It's essentially just a key value pair of different values that kind of help separate between like passwords and or other configuration stuff that you might not want to like hard code into your program or into your code repo. And so oftentimes these env files are kind of just passed around through different developers, but not ever uploaded into your repo. So that way you don't expose kind of like your secret keys or your database URLs or things like that. So how do we access it? Because in previous videos, I talked about how you can use like print env that'll show you kind of like the whole system configuration and all the key value and environment variables that are set through there. You can think of kind of these environment variables as like your local project environment variables, and they will get read in with all the other system environment variables as well. So let's show you how you can access those. So to access your .env file and use those variables in your Python program, we're going to pull in a Python package called python-env. So we're gonna need to install it because it doesn't come built into just Python out of the gate. So to do so, I highly recommend for any project that you activate or create a virtual environment. If you have a question about that, you can check out my channel. I have other videos. I can link it up above as well. But essentially, we're gonna say I'm gonna activate mine by saying source on my terminal. And then go to where it's installed. So this is my environment. This is the folder that it's in, bin, and then the activate. Now, if you're on Linux, this is kind of the same thing. This is the name of where my folder is. It's with the virtual environment, the folder, and then the script to activate it. If you're on a Windows, there is an activation script that you can run with that. It just depends on the terminal that you're in. Whether you can do source like this, or like if you're using like mingw, or if you have to use another one. So check out whatever terminal you're using. But I'm gonna go ahead and activate that. So now you can see that it's activated here. That's our virtual environment. And now what I'm gonna say is do Python. I'm going to go pip install, and then we're going to do python-.env. And then we should go ahead and hit install. We'll wait for this to go ahead and download everything and install. And just like that, it is installed. So now what we can do is we can come up here and we can say from .env, we want to say import load.env. So this is the function that we're going to kind of use. Now, I always like to put things under the main guard. Oftentimes, there is one function that you could get away with not doing. Just depends on how you write your script and how you intend this script to be used. But we're going to put everything under a main guard. So I'm going to use my snippet that I have built in called ifName, and it's just going to create that main guard for me. And then what we're going to do is I'm just going to say load.env, and then we're going to basically close the parentheses, right? Or the parentheses. So now you can see that this function takes several different things. So you can give it a path to a specific .env, and we'll talk about that here in a minute. So just hold on. We're going to get to that, because what happens if you have more than one, like a dev env, say you have a special debug one, or maybe you have your production one that you want to store. So we're going to show you how you can load those. So if you want to load this, because without this, let's check this out. So if I go in here and I say API key, which we're going to try and pull this key value right here, right? So if I go API key is equal to, and we're also going to have to import OS. And now what we're going to say is os.getEnv, and then we want it to say the API key test, or whatever we named it. Yeah, API key test. Okay. So now I can go ahead and hit print, and we're going to do fstring, and we're going to say we're going to API underscore key is this. So now if I go ahead and run this, let's see what the API key prints out, and it returns none. And I did that on purpose because if you notice, I commented this out. If I uncomment this and I rerun this, it is going to then return 123 ABC, which is this value right here. So the reason why is this function right here is what does all the loading in to kind of combine your .env file that's in the folder that you're running with the rest of the environment variables that are on your machine. Because essentially this all right here, all it's doing is grabbing all the environment variables on your machine, and this does the heavy lifting of kind of like finding the .env. So if you don't have anything else, it's always going to search for, by default, .env. So it's going to then load all that and then combine it with the other virtual environment so that when you do this, you actually get value. Because otherwise, like I showed, if you don't do this and you comment that again and you rerun this, you end up with it being none, right? So that is why we, load this in. So that is essentially, this is the basics. This is the very basics of how you can essentially get access to the env file information, is by just is by installing this package and then just calling that one function. But now let's talk about what happens if you have multiple .env files. Like I have like a dev env file or I have a prod env file. All right, so I'm going to go over here to my File Explorer in VS Code, and I'm going to go and create two new .env files. So I'm going to create a debug, or let's say dev.env, and then let's create another one and then just do call this prod.env. Okay, so now if I close that out, you'll see that I have two basically empty files. So let's basically copy, let's just say this one is prod, debug is false, and then this one is the dev, but maybe for whatever reason we say it's Z, whatever, right? So how do you access the different variables? Because if I go ahead and I rerun this, what you'll see is that it's just going to grab the default .env file, which is 123 ABC. And I guess we can go ahead and print. Let's go ahead and print this out as well. Do this as debug, and then just grab this, just so we don't have any typing errors. And just like that, we have debug. Okay, so now if I print this out, you'll see that it's just going to grab that default one. Well, what if I'm deploying this and I need to run my prod one? Well, the nice thing is you can pass in, like it says here, like I mentioned earlier, you can do .env environment path, and then you can just give it the path to the env file. So if I say /prod.env, now when I go ahead and run this, you will see that debug is now false because that was the difference between the prod one and the default env one. And we can even switch this up and say that this is this crazy thing like that. We can go ahead and rerun this. And now it has grabbed the prod environment. Now I can switch this out for dev, and now it should have the dev, with the only difference being between it and the original .env file is the Z at the end. So that is how you can essentially grab and leverage .env to grab and use it for multiple env files or configurations that you may have. The nice thing is you could take this one step further for your script or whatever thing you're writing, and rather than hard code in the path, what you could do is maybe as an input argument to your program, have it include the path. So you could do something like os.sys.rgv of 1, and we can say os.path.abs path. So get the absolute path. So this is going to take in the input, the first input argument, and we're going to do the abs, and then it's going to give us the absolute path to that whatever path we put in. Now, granted, ideally you'd probably put this into a variable, and then you do some like checking of like making sure it's an actual valid path and not just like someone give you something weird, because otherwise you'll get an error, right? So if I go ahead and run this again, and now if I give it an argument and I say /prod env, you'll see that now when I run this, I get the prod environment. Now I can say just .env, and I get the default one, or I can say dev env, and now I've gone through all of them, right? So that is how you can get access to a .env file in Python, and how you can leverage it to whether you need to grab, you set a whole configuration up, and then you need to grab all that information out to then set up the remaining of your program at the very initialization stage. So hope that this provided value. If it did, please hit that like button. Leave a comment if you have any questions, or if there's anything around this that you have more questions about that you would like to see more of, let me know. Until next time, keep on programming.